Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Rickey Report. It's Alex Espinoza with RickeyBlog.com. Use the code RickeyBlog at last dive bar for your next order. Get 10% off. Use my affiliate link down below. Help out your boy. Alright, so on Monday morning, the A's announced that they have an agreement to sell their half of the Coliseum to the African American Sports and Entertainment Group for $125 million. And this is the dollar amount that Casey Pratt was reporting a couple months ago when he was still a part of the media. Of course, now he's part of the Oakland mayor's office. You know, it's worth remembering nothing's done yet till the money hits the coffers, but there's framework now for AASEG to own all the Coliseum for $230 million. Because last week, Oakland and AASEG signed a term sheet. For the other half, AASEG is going to pay $105 million over the next couple years, and $63 million by January of next year. It's already been earmarked for the city budget. So yeah, it's time for AASEG to put up the money. That's really what it comes down to. So according to Sarah Ravani of the San Francisco Chronicle, the A's price was $20 million higher to cover operating costs. And Casey Pratt also shared that, the A's paid a little bit more, or excuse me, AASEG paid the A's a little bit more this time because the A's were incurring a $5 million annual operating cost. So maybe there's like 4 years of costs kind of built into this price. So overall, AASEG, they have agreements now to buy the whole plot. I believe it's like 112 acres for $230 million. So we kind of knew that this deal was going to come through because the A's and AASEG have been in negotiations for months, and Ravani also reported that the city's term sheet required AASEG to sign a cooperation agreement with the A's before any deal could be made. And with the A's agreeing to sell their share, AASEG can now move ahead with its plans. So AASEG, they have some pretty bold declarations. They said they want to bring a $5 billion development. Again, I don't know where they're getting that money from, that dollar figure, but they want to put in an entertainment complex, 25% affordable housing. I believe they want to keep the arena, and who knows what's going to happen with the Coliseum. I think that's going to be really interesting to see what happens as the A's leave this year, and then the Roots and the Soul have an agreement to play there next year. They're going to have their home games there next year before they move to the Malibu lot in 26. So really, just for the sake of Oakland, I really hope this works out. Of course, that $63 million is already tagged for the budget, and the first 3 or 4 payments are due by January 15th of next year. And the money's coming from Loop Capital. It's a minority-backed or minority-owned investment firm based out of Chicago, and I believe this is the biggest project they've ever undertaken as well. So we got to see if this really goes through here. So here's some comments from the press release from Ray Bobbitt, who's the founder of AASEG. He said, "AASEG is grateful to have reached this historic agreement with Oakland Athletics to purchase their interest in the Coliseum complex. As Oakland natives who grew up merely blocks away from the Coliseum, and as longtime Oakland business owners, we are filled with gratitude for this opportunity to assume stewardship of the Coliseum site." And then in the statement, we also heard from Dave Kaval, who's been pretty quiet lately, A's president. He said, "AASEG has a community-oriented vision for the long-term development of the site and will be strong stewards of the property. Their leadership and development provide substantial opportunities and benefits for East Oakland and the broader Oakland community." So, so last week, we saw Shang Tao and Bobbitt. They signed a term sheet that really lays out a pay schedule. We haven't seen that for the A's and their deal yet, so we'll have to see, when the A's are actually going to get this money. But you can just assume that it's only going to help them in their, in their efforts to build in Vegas. So, of course, the A's need $100 million to underwrite the first $100 million on the project. So they get $125 million here, helps them out there. But again, we have to see when the money's going to come. So, 4 years ago or 5 years ago in 2019, the A's bought their half of the Coliseum from the county for $85 million. So just looking at it, it looks like a $40 million profit for the A's. But again, Casey was saying that there was a higher price because the A's were paying $5 million annually. So maybe if you knock off the $20 million, as Sarah Ravani reported, it's like the A's still made a $20 million profit in about 5 years' time. So, back in 2019 when the A's initially bought this, it was most people believed it was kind of a backup in case Howard Terminal didn't work out. The A's also in 2018, I believe, their first initial batch of plans for Howard Terminal. It also included redeveloping the Coliseum site, like kind of knocking down the second and third decks, keeping the first deck as like a youth sports complex, something like that. But of course, that didn't all work out. And but it is interesting to go back and read those comments from 2019. Alameda County Supervisor Nate Miley said, "The A's have come forward with an offer that satisfies our needs, but also keeps the A's committed to Oakland." And Kaval said, "In November, we committed to a plan to honor and continue to invest in East Oakland, and this framework reflects that promise. We are pleased to be moving. One step closer to redeveloping the site to meet the needs of this community." And then I think this is really the most interesting one is from Mayor Libby Schaaf. She said, "If you sell this land, do not sell out East Oakland. You must include community benefits. You can't just take the money and run." Well, it looks like, a few years later, the A's are indeed just kind of taking the money and running, making a little profit before they head up to Sacramento after Howard Terminal fell through. So again, they made this deal in 2019 to buy the Coliseum site, but then by May of 2021, MLB put out this statement saying that the Coliseum wasn't viable. So this is from an article in May 2021 and a statement from MLB that said, "The Oakland Coliseum site is not a viable option for the future vision of baseball. We have instructed the Athletics to begin to explore other markets while they continue to pursue a waterfront ballpark in Oakland. The Athletics need a new ballpark to remain competitive, so it is now in our best interest to also consider other markets." So, and of course in 2021, that's when Kaval started doing all of his homework trips to Las Vegas, and the parallel paths started, and then of course now they're, as it stands now, going to Vegas with a 3 to 4 year visit to Sacramento stuck in between. And a lot of fans are saying, wait, if the A's did this deal, couldn't they have funded the gap at Howard Terminal when it came down to it? Because, Tim Cowan of ESPN reported back in August 2023 that, Mayor Shang Tao's office was saying that the A's were just $36 million short in negotiations when it came to the offsite infrastructure. But then earlier this year, when the A's the city of Oakland made its final lease pitches to the A's, they said it was supposedly 5 years, $97 million, which reportedly was the funding gap. So I don't know if it's, $36 million sounds good then, and then $97 million sounds good now. So I don't know where the actual funding gap was. But I don't think this $20 million or so that the A's made in profit, I don't think, obviously it could have helped a lot. But I think, if the A's wanted to make Howard Terminal happen, I think they could have happened. They just, when it came down to it, I think they just got cold feet. But again, that's a whole Howard Terminal. We've talked about that for a couple years. But, as far as expansion goes with MLB and stuff like that, AASEG has previously said that it wants to bring back Major League Sports to Oakland. But I think it's going to be kind of tough. You just take a look at all the leagues. Of course, the Raiders already went to Vegas, and, Allegiant Stadium's probably just printing out money at this point. Fans going from all around the country going there every weekend. And, of course, the Warriors went to Chase Center. That's working great for them financially. And, the A's, so they're leaving. And I think this all goes back to Bud Selig when he was a commissioner. Again, here's another clip. I played this earlier, but here's a clip from 2001 where Selig said it was a horrible mistake for the A's to ever even come to the Bay Area.
I've said in the past, and I'll say it again here, that I'm very protective of existing franchises. I watched 32 years ago the Kansas City A's move to Oakland. They hurt the Giants badly. They never really did very well themselves. It was a horrible mistake. As an old history major, I'm not likely to repeat mistakes in the past.
Again, I think it makes sense for MLB to have a team here, just given all the money and all the history and the passionate fans here. Of course, I'm a little biased. I grew up here rooting for this team in Oakland and everything, but I think it goes back to MLB just thinking that maybe this is a one-team market. And I also wanted to share this clip from Dave Kaval. This is back in 2021 where he was doing a lot of media appearances, and he did a pregame show with Brody Brazil and Dave Stewart from the Coliseum. And again, he kind of reiterated that they have direction from MLB to leave Oakland. So.
What have you accomplished in your 2 trips to Southern Nevada? Like, what takes place? Is this courting? Do you talk specifics? I realize it's business. What can you share about what do you do when you go there?
Well, we've been directed by the league and Rob Manfred, our commissioner, to really start looking at options beyond Oakland. And the key location that we've spent time in is Las Vegas. And we've had 2 trips there. We have another trip planned for next week. And we focus on 2 or 3 key things. One, market feasibility. Could it work? Where you'd put a stadium, who the partners would be, and what type of public-private partnership could exist.
That's pretty detailed, right? I mean,
yeah, it's pretty detailed.
That's not just, hey,
no.
It's
there's over 25 sites that we're looking at seriously. We've had meetings with all the key casinos and resorts, the key players in town, and actually the reception's been very positive. And it's important to understand that there's a parallel path. There's a path in Oakland to get this approval at Howard, and there's a parallel path in Southern Nevada, and that has to happen because we really need to get to a final solution on this that works, because right now it's just in limbo. Like, we've just been going sideways for 20 years. We haven't been able to find a home for the A's. We need a ballpark for a major league team, and we need to find where that's going to be.
Again, so even if it makes sense for MLB to stay here, it seems like they've already kind of made up their mind. And even just a couple of weeks ago at the All-Star break, John Shea talked to Rob Manfred, the MLB commissioner, about the A's and the possibility of them coming back to Oakland if there's a new mayor, because Sheng Tao's facing a recall this year. And this is what Manfred said. He said, "Look, our Oakland decisions have been made. What happens in Oakland is between the citizens of Oakland and their elected officials." So, and basically, I think they're just saying, we're at Oakland. They can do whatever they want, But I think it would be pretty hard for them to get expansion. I would put Sacramento ahead of them, even though I know there's not much public money up there. There's not as many deep-pocketed people up there. But it just seems like MLB is kind of hell-bent on leaving Oakland, and they have been for years. So it's really unfortunate, But Casey works for Casey Pratt, the former ABC 7 reporter, he now works for the mayor of Oakland as the chief of communications. And this is what he said about the deal on Twitter. He said, "The A's are moving to Sacramento, Las Vegas. The sale of this site has nothing to do with them staying or leaving. If anything, it helps to have a motivated group that controls the whole property, ready to pounce if there's sale or expansion." Again, I don't see MLB coming back to Oakland, but the only scenario I could see is Fisher sells to a deep-pocketed Bay Area group that wants to keep them here, and they pick either the Coliseum, even though MLB said it's unviable, but maybe AASEG will help them get a stadium there, or they get port priority use removed again from Howard Terminal and build there. So, but again, I really don't see that happening, just given MLB's constant stance against Oakland over the years. So, so WNBA with the Valkyries going to San Francisco. Oakland already missed out there. The Raiders are in Vegas. And I think the best chance, maybe, if Oakland does want to go Major League, is to somehow build a soccer-specific stadium there for the Roots. And I think it has to be at least 18,000. That's how big PayPal Park is, and that's the smallest stadium in MLS. They're between like 18 and 30,000. But the Roots right now, they're in the USL, which is it's basically like the second level. It's like the level right below MLS, even though there's no affiliation there. So, I think that's Oakland's best chance to get into the Major League ranks, is to rally behind the Roots. At this point, I don't think MLB, NBA, NFL, or WNBA is coming back here, unfortunately. So I feel lucky that I got to see this era of Oakland sports as a kid in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and then, the past few years, it's just all fallen apart. So again, the Roots and the Soul, the women's soccer team, they have agreements to play at the Coliseum next year, and then in 26 to move into a modular stadium, and the Malibu lot is kind of just south of the Coliseum there. So we got the Roots and the Soul in Oakland for now, but we'll see what happens with the future. But let's just see if AASEG has this money, can make it happen, because I think it would be a great thing for Oakland if that can, they can make something out of that huge plot of land there. So. And speaking about the A's and the Coliseum, it looks like the A's have been up to some funny business when it comes to their tickets for the September 26th home finale. A's fan Stephen Layton, a.k.a. JVB43 on Twitter, has been tracking the availability of the seats for months now, or a few weeks now, and Earlier this week, he noticed that some sections that were previously blocked out were, made available, and he was literally tracking it by the minute and by the hour, and by his count, it happened 17 times. There were seats that were made available that were previously unavailable. So as this went on a couple days ago, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, he got a screenshot from an employee, or he shared this screenshot from an employee, and it looks like the A's are still withholding about 2,750 tickets for September 26th, even though on Thursday they sent out a message saying that, it's all sold out for the 26th. So, for what it's worth, Susan Slusser reported that the screenshot was old, and she probably heard that from the A's, who wanted to get their voice out there. But it is interesting if you go to the official site. So the A's put out a tweet today with a graphic commemorating their final season at the Coliseum. And with all these, all these achievements that they've done over the years, 57 years at the Coliseum. But if you click on the link, it's just tickets to the final homestand. So I guess they're going to do like commemorative seats. They're going to open up, batting practice a little early so you can watch the A's. They're going to give away 25,000 Coliseum replicas on the final game of the year. But so that's like their, I guess, hurrah to the A's, But so if you go to the site, the link that they shared, it's interesting wrinkle on the site. They said, please note a limited number of additional seats may become available at a later date. So I guess that maybe that's just some damage control for the A's fans who have been tracking all these seats. So if some more come available, this has been an issue because the A's have been in the spotlight for the pricing of these tickets. $104 a ticket for the third deck is what it's been going for the past couple weeks, and it's been in the national news cycle. So Matt George of ABC 10 in Sacramento did a story about it, and he actually got comment from the A's about it. And here's what the A's had to say about the situation.
ABC 10 spoke with the A's, who claimed that the price follows their dynamic pricing model, a common practice in ticket sales. The A's say that third-party ticket brokers have been purchasing the seats at a lower price and flipping the tickets for a major profit on sites like StubHub or SeatGeek. By raising the prices, the A's are hoping to drive off the brokers and encourage fans to buy directly from them at the lowest cost.
So it appears that the A's told them two different things. First of all, that, this is just dynamic pricing, this is just what it is. But again, with all this shady business of seats becoming available that were previously blocked off, it just kind of looks like the A's are perhaps manipulating the system to drive up the prices. But also the second thing was interesting. It's like the A's told them they're raising prices to drive off brokers. So are they raising prices on dynamic pricing on purpose, or is that the market dictating it? Like, who's raising prices here, So again, it just doesn't really look good for the A's. Don't really know what to trust them with their word at this point over the past few years, what they say and everything. But we plow along towards the last home game, which is coming up in 7 weeks now. It's kind of crazy. So then on Thursday afternoon, Susan Slusser also wrote another article saying that the A's will not be opening up Mount Davis despite calls from fans to do so. We've seen big crowds there before, like in 2018, 2019, stuff like that. But I guess it's kind of fallen in disrepair. There's been some fans up there recently, and it's not really ready to go yet. So it doesn't look like they're going to be opening up Mount Davis, and this will be it. About 42,000 for the September 26th game. I mean, that's another thing, is I'm wondering if they even have enough staff. I'm sure they're going to have to hire a lot of extra people for that day just to make it go smoothly, because it's going to be huge up there, and it's going to be emotional. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be like that last day. It's going to be historic for sure, So speaking of the A's and President Dave Kaval, so we mentioned him. He was in that press release about the AASEG sale. But Kaval, he sent out this tweet in March saying it's going to be see you at the ballpark. It's going to be a celebration of 50 plus years in Oakland, but he's been conspicuously absent from, the team pretty much this whole time. I think the last time you heard from him was in Sacramento when they had a press conference in April, but he did a couple interviews up there. But ever since then, he's pretty much been absent. Haven't seen him talk, at the Las Vegas Stadium Authority meetings or anything like that. So he's been in the background, but Vitamin D, of course, is an A's fan. He's been giving us cool dispatches from his visits down to Vegas. He goes down there a few times a year for real estate conferences and does business down there because he's a commercial real estate developer. But what he's hearing is that, Sandy Dean and Ross Bowen have taken the lead on this stadium effort down in Vegas. And so we talked about Sandy Dean a couple weeks ago. He's, John Fisher's right-hand man, and they started Sansom Partners together, which is this investment firm that's dealing with big money. Sandy Dean, of course, he's the head of the new stadium events company that the A's established, so he's kind of a point man for the stadium events company, talking to interface with Las Vegas Stadium Authority and stuff like that. And Dee's also hearing that Ross Bowen, who's the son-in-law for John Fisher, he married one of Fisher's daughters. He's a Stanford guy, he's a young guy in his early 30s. He is now taking a bigger lead in these meetings in Vegas as well. If you go to the A's website, he's listed as the Executive VP of Ballpark Development, and he's, according to his LinkedIn, he's held that position since March of this year. So maybe Kaval's even taking a backseat in those negotiations as well. So, and speaking of the A's, I think it's taking a big picture look about what's going on. On Monday, a lot of the stock markets crashed after a labor report came out on Friday saying that unemployment was a little bit higher than expected at about 4.3%. And this week, a lot of the talk has been about the Fed, the Federal Reserve, if they're going to do an emergency cut before September 18th. I think they had a decision in June, and people were expecting them to cut interest rates, but they didn't do it, and now people are calling, some analysts are calling for them to do an emergency cut now and then another one in about a month, as, it looks like the markets are kind of worried about the state, the future of the American economy and perhaps dipping into another recession. So, the Fed started raising interest rates in March 2022, and it's been hovering at this current level of about 5.3, which is its highest levels in like 17 years. But so how is this relevant to the A's? Of course, the higher the interest rates are, the more expensive it is to borrow money. So, the A's have said that they're going to borrow up to $300 million, or at least their goal is to secure $300 million in debt financing from either a lender or a bank or something. And they're also looking for $850 million in equity investing and from outside investors, or ideally somebody from Vegas to help pitch in to the Fisher families, who might end up just paying for this whole thing if the A's go through with it. So obviously, if the interest rates do get cut, that would change the equation for the A's and outside investors and lenders and bankers and everybody involved when there's a lot of borrowed money being involved for these transactions to pay for this stuff. So. So the the Las Vegas Stadium Authority they have a meeting scheduled for September 19th, and the Fed is supposed to cut rates on September 18th, but, just with the laws of Nevada politics and everything, you have to show the agenda for the meeting, a few days beforehand. So I'm thinking that, basically the A's would have to have their agenda in before the Fed would make a cut on September 18th. So my guess is that we probably won't see a meaty development agreement with like details, if we do see one, until October at the earliest. And Steve Hill mentioned something along those lines. He said that they're going to meet in August, I believe next week on August 15th. And then we'll see if they meet in September or October. So I think interest rates are going to have a lot to do with that. So again, Fisher's still worth $3 billion. His family's, worth around $10 billion according to Forbes. His brother, he's got two older brothers and his mom who are worth combined about $5 billion just between the three of them. So, but obviously lower interest rates would be great for them. So again, the A's have to throw down $100 million, the first $100 million on this project, according to the language of SB1. And I believe they have to have a signed development agreement by December, or the Stadium Authority, their authority expires to approve the deal. But again, we had Jeremy Koo, a lawyer, on, and he said, but LVSA, the Stadium Authority, would have to enforce that on themselves. So maybe I can do some more digging around on that, but for now, I believe that December 15th-ish, because that's 18 months from when SB1 was signed, could be a deadline for the Stadium Authority to approve a development agreement. So we haven't heard anything about lenders or investors coming on board yet, but I think the biggest thing is if Fisher is going to be willing to put down a stadium without knowing if a hotel is going to be attached to it or not, because we'll have to see how much money Bally's has after this merger and everything like that. So a lot of moving parts here as we get towards the end of the year. And then on Thursday evening, we got another update from Nevada Independent on the situation in Vegas. And Strong Public Schools Nevada, which is a PAC formed by the Nevada State Education Association, the same group that did Schools Over Stadiums, They are challenging the legality and the constitutionality of SB 1. According to The Independent, attorneys argued for more than 90 minutes on Thursday regarding the constitutionality of SB 1 and the $380 million in public financing for the stadium. So District Judge Kristen Lewis didn't make a decision according to this report, but she will have a written decision on the case later when she hears from both sides. Again, we had Chris Daly of Strong Public Schools Nevada on earlier. And he told us that they're challenging the constitutionality in 5 different areas. For example, the PSLs that the A's are seeking. The PAC is arguing that they needed a 2/3 majority instead of the 62% that they got from the 2 bodies from the House, or from the Senate and the Assembly last year when SB 1 was voted on. So, had some more A's news from the Chronicle as Billy Beane, the former A's GM, executive vice president, or whatever he was for these 20 plus years. He talked to Susan Slusser of the Chronicle for a story, and it was mostly pretty softball and nostalgic, looking back on the good time kind of thing. I could see both points of view. I saw some people were complaining like, oh man, there was no hard questions about like the move and all this stuff, but it's also like, I don't know if everything has to be about how terrible this is, I mean, so I just read it on a Sunday morning with some coffee. I was like, oh, that was kind of nice, it was a nice kind of easygoing story, but Slusser, she did talk to kind of go back and forth with some fans on Twitter, and this was her reasoning why she didn't really ask him about the move and stuff. She said he obviously can't speak about it and he doesn't have anything to do with it, so yeah, it was mostly softball stuff, but maybe we'll hear from Billy one day or later. But I guess his favorite team ever was the 2001 team. They won the AL West. Giambi won the MVP that year, but of course the A's couldn't sign him the year after. Went to the Yankees. Oh, that was still a sad day. And he said his favorite game ever was 2012, game 162. So he actually said that game 20 was brutal because Michael Lewis, the author of Moneyball, was with him, and he just felt really uncomfortable. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, so it's interesting to kind of think about Billy Beane's legacy here because, I used to criticize him because the A's, they only went to 1 ALCS his whole reign that they were there. Yeah, I mean, but then I also think, what would it be if he wasn't there? Maybe they wouldn't have been competitive at all. Maybe it could have been like a White Sox situation this year. They could have been really terrible. I mean, he has the Moneyball teams, and I mean, yeah, we see how the A's operate. So they try to keep the band together as long as, until arbitration hits and the dollar signs go up, and then they trade dudes away, and then they do it again. So, you have handcuffs when you're, working for John Fisher, and he's not willing to invest in the team. So, I think I always wonder what 2020 would have been like if it was full. It seemed like they were really going in there. They had a good team. I mean, they beat the White Sox in that first series. But of course, it was a pandemic, 60-game season. That was weird. But yeah, I always wonder, what would have happened if the pandemic would have hit. But hey, I guess we'll never know. I think when people think of Billy Beane, I think they think of the Cespedes trade, which is fair. I think he was probably looking at analytics to just thinking yeah, Lester would be a great addition, and then a platoon of Johnny Gomes and Brandon Moss will add up for Cespedes, and maybe on paper or something it would have been kind of close. But I just think, I don't know, just the psychological component of losing Cespedes. That lineup was just different when it was him, Cespedes, Moss, boom, boom, boom back in there. It was different. Derek Norris was crazy that year. Just losing Cespedes out of there, just kind of for an opposing team, is just not the same bite, if you see Johnny Gomes in there, it's just not the same, so despite what the analytics might tell you, I think there's a psychological component, but I think for me, his worst trade was the Donaldson trade. Donaldson was just entering his first year of arbitration. He only made $4.3 million in 2015, and then he won the MVP. And of course, they got back from the Blue Jays Brett Lawrie and Sean Nolan, Kendall Graveman, and Franklin Barreto. So, I mean, it never really worked out, and Donaldson was pretty good for years. So, but again, it's what would the A's have been like if he wasn't there? Maybe they could have been a lot worse. So, at least there were some competitive teams, fun teams to root for, but ultimately, they just got to the ALCS once throughout his whole tenure there. So love it or hate it, Billy Beane did have a Q&A on earlier this week with Susan. And to wrap it up, just want to talk about the most recent homestand that the A's had. It was pretty fun. There was a lot of big crowds on hand to see the Dodgers. I was there on Friday night when The A's were up 6-2 in the the top of the ninth, and Ohtani hit like an absolute bomb to make it 6-5, but the A's held on to win. And then it was also Steven Nelson, who's the play-by-play guy for the Dodgers, did not hold back. His last dive bar has been, pretty much every team that comes in here talks about the history of the A's, and then also kind of rips A's ownership for just the way that they're going out. And Steven Nelson really, really dug in. There was a bunch of clips from last dive bar, but here's a little example of some of the stuff that Nelson was saying.
Relocations happen, but the way this one has happened is shameful. It should be anyway, but because the people running it are apparently shameless, they are experiencing no embarrassment in any facet. All right, you slash payroll 50%, boost season tickets prices 30%, and you wonder why people aren't showing up. No, they don't wonder. It was seemingly intentional, insidious, in fact.
So it is interesting that all these kids, these MLB announcers, they're team employees, so they're getting the okay from somebody to say all this stuff, and pretty much everybody's dumping on the A's and Fisher as they come into the Coliseum for the last time. So, on Tuesday, when the White Sox were in town, so on Monday night, the A's beat the White Sox to extend their losing streak to 21 games. Everybody was talking about that, and the White Sox, it was tied for the longest losing streak in American League history. On Tuesday night, there was a group of about 50 A's fans. We were underneath the radio booth, the TV booth, making noise throughout the whole game and holding up cell flags and stuff like that. And afterwards, Dallas Braden and Vince Cotroneo, they got shutouts during the game. They were giving the fans love, so it was cool. Like it was a fun night, and this was kind of not really publicized. So, the 68s and Last Dive Bar might do it. We might all do it again. Just to voice our opinion one more time about Fisher and Manfred and Reinsdorf and stuff like that. A lot of times we've been talking about, the visiting teams and stuff like that and their coverage coming in to the Coliseum, but also, the A's have been doing Alumni Sundays whenever there's a home game on a Sunday, and most recently they had Chad Pinder on, and he had some really good stuff to say about A's fans.
These people put this uniform on with more pride than 90% of the players that put that on. And for me, that is amazing. And you see it in the right field crew, you see it in the left field crew. They're here every game.
Well, you got to believe it makes it easy for guys like you who already play the game with your hair on fire, play it as hard as you can possibly play. It makes it that much easier to go out and sell out for these fans, knowing that they strap it on, rain or shine with you. They're down there following you to Stockton during rehab assignments. They're back up here when you come off the injured list.
So shout out to Chad Pinder, and also shout out to Clay Wood, the longtime A's head groundskeeper, has been with us for 30 plus years. And according to John Shea of the Chronicle, Clay Wood will not be joining the team up to Sacramento. According to this recent article, the A's, I guess, offered him a position, but he said no. Of course, they're going to be playing on synthetic turf up there, and the playing surface in Oakland's always been so epic. It's always been so nice. I don't know how they did it when the Raiders were here. But yeah, shout out to Clay Wood for keeping that field spectacular, and yeah, hopefully the Roots can hire him next year to keep the playing surface there or something like that. So shout out to Clay Wood, who's another high-profile layoff, along with Vince Cotroneo and I don't know, 600 other people as the A's move up to Sacramento. So, all right, thanks a lot for listening. I'm Alex Espinoza. Use the code RickeyBlog at Last Dive Bar for 10% off your next order. Use my affiliate link down below. And yeah, see you at some A's games, see you at some B's games, and yeah, there's only a few homestands left at the Coliseum. So, all right, have a good one.